All right, everyone, good evening and welcome to the Committee of the Whole meeting for February the 24th at 6 p.m. I'd like to remind everyone that this meeting is being recorded for your viewing pleasure. With that, I'm going to call the meeting to order, and I'm going to call for a motion to adopt the agenda with one change that Horizon Health and the Community Health Needs Assessment. They're not here this evening, so they won't be presenting. So with that, do I have a motion to accept the agenda? So moved by Councillor Glant, seconded by Councillor Vittori. Questions to the motion? Questions to the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried. With that, I'll remind everyone there's conflict of interest declaration forms in the middle of the table. Please fill it in if you have a conflict this evening and pass it on to the clerk and with the reason. So with that, we are going to move on to new business and item 4.2, presentations of the zoning bylaw consolidations. Yeah, welcome, Lori. How are you tonight? Welcome to the town of Salisbury.
That's right. Finally, after all these years, I will not be making that mistake anymore. I'm telling you guys.
Just use Salisbury, it's easier.
Here. Yep. I do. No, hit that. We'll just share the presentation first and then we'll start. Okay. Window. The second one. There to go. And then just go back to WebEx. Would be it, yeah. This one. Hit where his name is, and then where the microphone is. And hit that. Hit that, yeah. I can't see on your screen.
Sorry.
Let me see. Expel, vanish. Why is it not letting you do that? Okay, he's gonna have to message us if he has any questions.
I'm good.
Okay, so the exercise, of course, that we're going through right now is municipal plan and zoning bylaw consolidation. Uses. It's opposite of.
I guess not. I can move it ahead for you.
Spoke too soon, maybe.
So in 2023, of course, there was the municipal reform that resulted in the change of the boundaries of Salisbury. So moving from the former village of Salisbury boundaries that you see on the wall here to include portions of former LSDs into the new town of Salisbury boundaries. With leading up to that point, there was full land use control over land within the territory of Salisbury now, and they were covered under two different forms. So in the former village, we had the municipal plan and zoning bylaw, which was adopted in January of 2021. And then we had the Westmoreland Albert Rural Plan, which covered all the areas outside the former village boundary. I do want to make one note or correction from that from the preliminary report that I submitted. I had referenced it being later in 2021 when the Westmoreland Albert Rural Plan was adopted, but it was actually July of 2022 when it was actually adopted by the minister. Regardless, at the end of the day, that just put full land use coverage in place. When we became a town, however, you are required under legislation to have a municipal plan and zoning bylaw. So essentially, we were in a really good position to take former village of Salisbury municipal plan and zoning bylaw and then incorporate the land use regulations associated with that into from the WARP into these two documents. So jumping right into the what you can expect to see in this consolidated document that we've created. Dealing first with the municipal plan, there is additional objectives and policies that were moved from the Westmoreland Albert Rural Plan into this one. Mainly more rural focus in that rural document, and then the former village being that more urbanized center of the community. We've also kind of did little tweaks in there, like changing former designations of it used to be called the town center or the village center. Now we changed it to the town center. And then expanded that rural designation that we had, which is the gray area indicated on the future land use maps on the wall, expanding that throughout the new boundary now. The other introduction that would be incorporated into this would be the sea level rise policies, primarily on residential development along the river and the areas that are prone to flooding. This is already incorporated in the former village bylaws through zoning, where we just created a open space conservation zone all along the river. However, there will, in the future one, you'll see an actual overlay zone that'll extend beyond those former village boundaries. We've also added policies about infill overlay zoning on existing public roads, which again mirror the Westmoreland Albert Plan. This allows those existing public roads to have the minimum 1 acre lot size, which is in line with the settlement pattern SBI statements. The other little tweak would be that we would still allow mini homes as a form of single detached dwellings outside the serviceable boundary of the village, but within the serviceable area, mini homes would still have to fall under that mini home, or now the dwelling group zone. Move on to the next. There's policies surrounding economic development that were incorporated into the Westmoreland Albert Rural Plan regarding encouraging recreation and tourism and campgrounds, especially within the rural areas. So that's been moved over into the new document. We've also added policies on protecting water supplies, and again, going back to the sea level rise and other climate change adaptation requirements from the Westmoreland Albert Plan. Water assessments have always been triggered in Salisbury anyway for larger projects, but we've also incorporated dwelling group zones and campgrounds into requiring to have water studies as well before they should proceed. There is again kind of, we were more urban focused in the former village boundaries, and now there is the incorporation of the natural resource components that was in the Westmoreland Albert. Agriculture and food production, of course, was also in that former bylaw, which has been incorporated. And we've actually replaced the heritage policies that were within the former village and replaced it with language that was better suited based on the Westmoreland Albert Rural Plan. And go back to this dwelling group zone. So the dwelling group zone is ones that are used when there's more than one dwelling on a lot. It will replace the former manufactured dwelling zone for the mobile home park in the village. But anything new would be, of course, triggering rezoning processes to go through. And the other final thing that we've added to the plan is a proposed new policy that would be added in to discuss that council should undertake a study to review residential lot sizes due to discrepancies when we're compiling the two documents together, where the lot sizes in the former village did not match provincial lot sizes that were on public sewer systems. So we're just suggesting we kept the village's lot sizes for the time being, but we'd suggest the council look at that in the future as to, why that discrepancy was there, and are those still the proper lot sizes that should be reflected. Moving on to the zoning bylaw, which is your more day-to-day document that you use in land use planning. This is where we have our detailed regulations. So one of the big changes, or well, not necessarily a change, but in combining the two. Cannabis production previously was outdoor was allowed in the rural areas, indoor triggered a rezoning. Former village bylaws required any cannabis production to go into the industrial zone or undertake an industrial zoning. So we would move towards the following the village's procedure, which was that cannabis productions would all require the industrial zoning and would trigger a rezoning process to do so. Kind of also reformatted just the way lot sizes appear in the bylaws. So Westmoreland, Albert, lot size regulations are always written out at the beginning of a rural plan. Salisbury's municipal plan and zoning bylaw had tables in each of the zones so that it's more clearly defined and easier to read for individuals looking for lot sizes. So we've followed that same procedure. We've also incorporated a minimum dwelling size from the Westmoreland Albert plan into the zoning bylaw of Salisbury now. This is a pretty standard minimum dwelling size that's seen in the province of New Brunswick. We've also added provisions on some exemptions around height and size for agricultural uses, rural uses, and resource development. And intensive resource development. So these are things like making sure that we don't have a height limit set, that things like grain silos or, barns are unable to be met. So that addresses that particular issue. We've also included some tweaks to the fencing provisions in the bylaw just to make sure that agricultural fencing is not restricted in the agriculture or the rural areas. Next slide. The other thing that's from the Westmoreland Albert would be the introduction of setbacks and reciprocal setbacks for between agricultural uses and the surrounding conflicting uses that can occur. So making sure that we have a separation between those new dwellings and new agricultural uses so that we're reducing the potential for land use conflict. Shipping containers are still going to be allowed to be used for accessory buildings in the rural areas and the agriculture and any of those rural zones that we have. But everything within the serviceable boundary will not be allowed to have shipping containers as accessory buildings. We're also looking at maintaining very similar parking requirements that were in place between the two documents. The one that's more of a change would be the reduction of multi-units to a 1.25 spaces per dwelling unit versus it was in the former village was 1.5 spaces. Home occupations is another one that's changed slightly, mainly just in terminology though. What you'll see is home-based business being referred to if it's a home occupation with inside the dwelling. And then if it's a home occupation that's in an accessory building, we would use the term home industry. The one exception to the home industry use would be in the rural areas. We would continue to allow vehicle repair shops as a suitable home occupation in the accessory building, but within the serviceable boundaries of the town, we will not allow that as a home occupation. And then the final difference that you would kind of notice within the zoning bylaw would be just standardization of definitions between the two documents. So making sure that we don't have multiple terminology being used for the same. This is just kind of slide showing the change of the names. So some of the names have changed, but the majority of them have stayed the same. So now you'll see an agriculture zone. Those are lands that are already identified under the FLIP program or the Farm Identification Program in New Brunswick. So they automatically get zoned to agricultural now. We have intensive resource development. That's the one that's meant for more if you have a pit, or sorry, not a pit, a quarry. So there's blasting that's occurring. Would be a common intensive resource development zone property. Resource development would be those pit, like a pit property, so no blasting that's occurring, but some extraction that's occurring on site. We would have the rural residential zone to cover the areas that there's only a couple of them, but they're the smaller traditional 1 acre subdivisions that have kind of occurred outside former village area, village boundaries. And we would have that sea level rise overlay zone, so it'll be a hatched area that appears along the river. And again, an infill overlay zone, which will appear along the public roads outside the serviceable area of town. And the dwelling group zone, which there is no previously zoned dwelling group zones in the outside the former village, but we will switch the mini home park to dwelling group zone. Zone changes from the former village. We will use, instead of residential use, which is the area identified in yellow on your zoning map, we'll actually call that residential service now to represent that it does have public sewer. Then we will also change, of course, the village center zone to town center, and we will be changing the former conservation zone that was in Westmoreland, Albert, to the open space conservation zone that was already incorporated into the former village. And then to wrap up, so under the Community Planning Act, there is a legislative adoption process that's required to be undertaken in order to do a new municipal plan and zoning bylaw. So in this particular case, council would look at starting the public engagement process to consolidate these by passing a resolution. And the resolution would set, it's tentatively kind of drawn up. If council chooses to entertain it, would set a public presentation for March 24th, followed by a public hearing on April 28th. And then throughout that process, we are required as well to seek the views of the Planning Review and Adjustment Committee for adopting any land use bylaw, and that is tentatively scheduled for April 23rd. Of course, following those processes, then council would be required to do 3 successful readings at 2 different locations, 2 different times. And that's my quick overview of.
With that, there's a recommendation on the floor with Lori's legalese wording to direct us to start that, and then any questions for Lori.
Oh, I'll read it.
We're just reading. It's long, so we thought maybe
I know.
you did.
Whereas council has considered repealing bylaw number 50, the Village of Salisbury Municipal Plan, and bylaw number 51, the Village of Salisbury zoning bylaw, along with the portion of the Westmoreland Albert Planning Area Regulation 21-WAP-069-00 that affects properties in the new municipal entity, and adopting a new municipal plan and zoning bylaw for the town of Salisbury. Be it resolved that the council of the town of Salisbury directs that the appropriate bylaws be prepared to adopt a municipal plan and zoning bylaw for the town, that the proposed bylaws be referred to the Southeast Planning Review and Adjustment Committee for their views, that the notice of intention requirements of the Community Planning Act be fulfilled with respect to the proposed amendments, and sets the committee of the whole meeting on Monday, March 24th, 2025 at 6 p.m. in the council chambers at the municipal office, 56 Douglas Street, Salisbury, New Brunswick, as the date, time, and place for the public presentation of council's intent to amend the municipal plan, and sets the committee of the whole meeting on Monday, April 28th, 2025 at the municipal office, 56 Douglas Street, Salisbury, New Brunswick at 6 p.m. as the date, time, and place for the public hearing of consideration of objections to the proposed bylaws. So moved.
This is moved by Councillor Thorne, seconded by Mary Brunis. Okay, questions to the motion?
I have one, for the minimum building size, or resident dwelling size. What if somewhere down the road, someone came to us with a proposal for a tiny home community? How would we get around that minimum size?
You would either undertake a text amendment, change the minimum dwelling size, or you would look to see if it fit under the dwelling group zone, because you'd be changing the zoning.
So dwelling group zone required to be 454 square feet.
It could. The dwelling group zone though will require, will be a little bit different in that it'll require a development agreement to go along with it. So that's where it could. But I would say, you know, there's a couple different options too. Then you got tiny homes. It could also be at a later date and be done to incorporate what Salisbury views as a tiny home, and that could be incorporated into the bylaw as well.
Yes. I just wanted to make sure we weren't tying our hands to something that we couldn't even consider down the road because we've said it.
Oh, no, you can definitely, but to me, before you get into changing lot size or building
Well,
sizes,
right.
you should be looking more cohesively at, you know, the implications of tiny homes and what exactly they mean, because there's a lot of different definitions that are floating around about what a tiny home is.
Thank you.
Anything additional?
I have a couple. I'm just trying to get to my comments. The question I have is about the water studies or the new change in the water for like it's new campgrounds and things, right? Not existing.
That's correct. I mean, anything that is existing today, even if should the zoning process, you know, and I'll just use the example again of cannabis. If there's an outdoor cannabis operation outside the former village boundaries legally existing today, it's grandfathered in and it's allowed to continue. It would only apply to new folks.
Is that a common one since you brought it up? It was one of my notes.
It's just one that stands out for me that we've specifically changed from what was permitted formally in Westmoreland.
So we asked for that.
Yeah, we had a last meeting.
I was about that. So. The secondary use building. I just wanted to make sure I understood it. So the 2-unit dwellings, that's only a change in the outside area. Or is there a change inside too? And the
Businesses?
no, I don't know.
The
It's a
accessory
different,
buildings?
it's
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
here than it was up
We're
there.
allowed to have 2 units on a lot today.
Right.
Oh, yeah, that was just for a clarification. That slide that you're probably referencing there, it was just clarifying that what's permitted was going to continue. We just were not going to allow, we weren't adding new stuff. So just kind of a verification between what's permitted in Westmoreland, Albert versus former village.
And then anybody in the home-based business change would be again another grandfathered until new.
Yeah, although really there shouldn't be much grandfathering happening with that in the fact that we had allowed home occupations and accessory buildings in the former village anyway.
Okay.
It's just a change in terminology. So we would just call them, we would allow it as a conditional use. And we would just say in the bylaw, it's a conditional use that you can have a home occupation and an accessory building. Now we've just got it listed as it's a home industry.
And there's no zoning change for that. That's it. That's all I have.
So do we have to vote?
John Weeb's hand is up.
John, do you have any questions, John?
Sorry, I read through this before, but I forget now. Was Garden Suite somewhere mentioned in this plan?
No.
Does that get added at this point, or should it be added at some other point?
That would be something that would get added at a later date. Again, right now, we are only dealing with a consolidation between the two different documents that we had. So that would be the introduction of a new concept. So that could be undertaken at a later time by council or an individual if they so chose.
So my second question is, if this all goes forward and all the things there's no real hiccups, does that mean after third reading in the June council, perhaps it needs to be done after third reading, this is passed, or is there any more work anywhere else have to be done with this?
For these bylaws?
for this consolidation.
for the
We finalized.
consolidation. So what'll happen is once that ends the official legal part of it from council's perspective, then it has to go to the minister for the minister to sign off on the municipal plan. And then it has to, of course, get registered in the registry office, and then it becomes your official land use plans.
Does it come into effect when it's at the registry office or when it's stamped?
Ideally, it's when you've got your registration
Notice.
number stamped on it. That's what signifies it. There is a follow-up step that we do once we get that back from the registry, which is we post it on the town's website to say that it's official. And we're required to take a posting of that and send it back to the minister to verify that the process is completed.
So this is looking like fall at the earliest?
Oh, no, it could be depending on how you choose to do your readings, but I mean, I have tentatively scheduled that third reading could be June 9th. Could be earlier than that as well, but June 9th would be your third reading, and then it's, formality of following through on those registration and the ministerial. The minister will actually, or the minister's office will actually see the documents well in advance so that they're aware that they're coming and there's no surprises just to what we're presenting.
Believe it or not, we got our last one in 2 days, I think it was. Yeah. So generally it's not that fast, but I'm looking at the screen, but you're here. It's not what we usually see for provincial approval timelines. Yeah. These.
I wouldn't think in the summertime either, but
Yeah, they're usually pretty quick. This one was in the summer. The last one,
Oh, really?
or it was maybe the fall.
That was the fall because it was just before
The election, right? Yeah.
That helped it get through. But again, I mean, generally when it goes to the minister at this point, it's more of a checking of a procedural thing. The bylaws have already had to have been sworn at that point, that they're done legally and that they're done under the direction of a professional planner. So it's really more of just following through the steps.
great, thank you.
And there will be work at some point in the meantime to look at secondary suites. We just don't know what that looks like yet. So that will come back at some point on a regional basis, I think, because I think other people are asking the same question.
Thank you very much, Lori.
Now we need to
Now,
vote.
okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded, John?
He's out.
I said aye.
Okay.
Aye, and the yay.
Unanimous. You have your marching orders. Thank you very much, Lori. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Lord.
Now we'll move on to item number 4.3, presentation of the overview of Salisbury 250. Welcome, Kate.
It's really fun here today. Thank you. Good evening, folks. Wait for the presentation to get.
I really wish the screen was down there.
There we go.
All right. Good
Like it
evening,
at first.
for your time this evening. Here again, talking about Salisbury 250. I feel like I was just here yesterday talking about the plan for 2024, and here we are giving a review of what the committee set out to do and what we successfully accomplished during the year. I will say that this is a very brief overview of programming. We accomplished a lot during the year, so for the sake of time, I'm going to cut it back a little bit. If you are interested in a more in-depth look at programming or analytics, statistics, all that fun stuff, you should have received a copy of the full report as well. So if you haven't done so already, I would encourage you to read it. I might be biased since I wrote it, but I think it's a good read.
I did read it and I was gonna say, great job. I thought it was delightful.
Thank you so much. I will also give a disclaimer. I'm battling a cough, so please forgive me as I cough my way through this. But who knows? So just as an overview, I'm going to give a brief background into what Salisbury 250 was, what we set out to do during the year,
And then I'll provide a year in review, including all the programming that we did, specifically the larger events and projects that we worked on throughout the year. I'll touch on briefly the arts and culture influence that we saw that obviously goes hand in hand with our heritage as well. And then we'll leave it off with the community impact that we saw this program have as well. So we can go to the next slide. So just as a little bit of background, as I'm sure most of us all know already, 2024 marked 250 years of the first permanent settlement, what would become Salisbury. So this was inhabited by immigrants of Yorkshire, England in 1774. So that date we have factual, we have that on paper, which is why we sort of wrapped the whole celebration up in a neat and tidy 250 bow. But we took the opportunity to celebrate all aspects of our history and heritage, including before, during, and after the settlement, which would include the Indigenous and Acadian settlers that were also on this land prior to this arrival in 1774. So the Salisbury 250 Planning Committee was formed in September of 2023 to prepare for the year. The picture you see on this slide is from the documentary premiere, which includes a couple folks who weren't specifically on the committee, but lent a helping hand throughout the whole year. But this was the only picture we have of most of the committee members, which is why it's included. So the committee's primary purpose was to share stories and share local knowledge. We wanted to make sure that it was the residents themselves that were telling the stories and wanted to make sure that it came firsthand from lifelong residents who knew the important things to touch on during the year. And our main goal was to instill a sense of pride and nostalgia in the community, whether people lived here for 10, 20, 30, 50 years, whatever it may be, someone was able to connect with it in some way and feel that sense of community pride. So on the committee, we had 7 residents, 3 town staff members, and 3 members from council. So funding, in addition to the funding set aside from council, we had additional funding secured through the Government of Canada, through the Building Communities through Arts and Heritage Community Anniversaries Grant, and the Government of New Brunswick through their Commemorations and Celebrations program. So I want to give another public thank you to our funders that helped us do everything that we set out to do in our 250 programming, because without them, we would not have been able to be as successful with this as we were. So just as, like I said, a brief recap for our year, excuse me, we learned that Salisbury has an incredibly rich history. A lot of people heard the term year-long campaign or celebration, and some people might have been worried that we would have overlapped some information because that's a long time to fill for a campaign. But we learned that we have so much history in Salisbury that it fully allowed for a year full of learning and teaching the residents and celebrating our heritage as well. So in addition to the larger projects that I'll be going a little more in depth throughout this presentation, we had several events throughout the year as well, and we aimed for a monthly event that corresponded with a central theme that was assigned to each month of the year. So in addition to these, we had a history lesson at least once a month that was posted to the town's Facebook page and the website as well. And if you're interested in a full index of that, that's also included in the report as well. So the banner program was one of the main projects that the committee set out to accomplish during the year. So this was created with the intent of honoring different elements in our history, whether that be people, places, different things. And it took inspiration from the Legion's veteran banner program that happens annually through October and November. So we had a public nomination form that was open in November of 2023, and this remained open until around the end of January 2024. And during this window, we had about 65 nominations, and this included the nominations that were just brought up through discussions with the committee, through the committee meetings as well. So once the public nomination form was closed in January, between February and May 2024, the committee spent several hours discussing and narrowing this list down. We had the goal of narrowing the list down to 40, and it was such a difficult task that the best we could do was 41. So 41 was our final number, and these banners were then installed in June of 2024 and remained on the poles of Main Street until the veteran banners were installed in October. So in addition to the banners being installed, we also had biographies on each of the banner recipients that was available both virtually on the website and also through a tangible booklet that was here at the office. I think we had about 700 booklets that we ordered, and most, if not all of them, were claimed within that window of June to October. So they were definitely popular. People were coming in, taking handfuls at a time. So that was nice to see. The Salisbury 250 documentary was another larger project that the committee set out to do. We knew that the story sharing that we were seeing was really important to preserve, and we wanted to make sure that that was also in a digital format as well to continue to be shared. Excuse me. So we had committee members, residents, subject matter experts. They all sat down and did an interview on camera with Peach Marketing. So this 25-minute interview style documentary premiered during Community Days in August. And one of the wording here that I'll point out is subject matter experts. We really wanted to make sure that this history was accurately and adequately told, not only from the history of Salisbury perspective, but going back to tying in all aspects to our history. We wanted to make sure that the history on both the Indigenous and Acadian settlers was also told accurately as well. So we outreached and had a couple subject matter experts that were also included in the documentary as well. So a thank you to them for taking the time to help us out with this project.
It was very well done.
Yeah.
Yes, I think it was very well done, and it's posted on both the Facebook page and YouTube. So I think eventually it will be shared again to hopefully get those views up again. Another larger project that we kind of set out as a priority was the Maui-Omi, or the powwow, as a lot of people might recognize it being called. So the Salisbury 250 committee kind of outlined this as one of the priorities for the year. We wanted to look at hosting a Maui-Omi in Salisbury for the Salisbury 250 celebrations. We lucked out in having a teacher that was sitting on the committee who let us know that the district was looking for a location to host their second Maui-Omi on behalf of the district. So it just worked out well enough that timelines lined up, and we were able to help both in funding and planning and executing the Maui-Omi. So we had a very good turnout of people. And again, since this was on behalf of the district, we had several schools bust in as well, which a lot of the attendance came from that as well. And as far as I know, this is the first Maui-Omi that was recorded in Salisbury's history. So that was quite something to be a part of. So touching just a little bit on the arts and culture influence, like I said, this kind of goes hand in hand when we talk about the heritage and history of our community. And we knew that featuring local artists was another one of those priorities that the committee had discussed about. So the logo that I'm sure you've all seen many a time, that was also included previously in the presentation, that was designed by local artist Eric Goggin. And we also tried to incorporate art as much as we could into the programming of Salisbury 250, both on behalf of the Salisbury 250 committee, but also from the town as well. So this includes moving the theme into things like our Canada Day coloring contest, which happens on an annual basis, and the holiday card contest that was introduced in 2024. One of the requirements for that was to follow the theme of Salisbury 250, or at least the theme of the community of Salisbury, at least. We also see outside groups like the Silver Fox Art Circle, who is pictured in this slide here, who took inspiration independently from Salisbury 250, and they actually worked towards making their own little exhibit that they had up in the library for December of 2024 to kind of close the celebratory year off in their own way. Some other things, we know that the amphitheater was one of the larger things that the town brought in 2024. which we had our first band play at yesterday during our Winterfest celebrations. But in addition to having that amphitheater to build on the arts and culture landscape that we've kind of set the stage for, we've also brought in those 250 numberings that are currently wrapped with vinyl that has a summary of all those Salisbury 250 themes. And I think it's a pretty good read for anyone who is interested in learning a little bit more on our history. So in terms of community impact, with something like this, where we set out and our goal was to instill a sense of pride and nostalgia, it's hard to kind of measure the success of this through numerical values. So instead of looking at reach and views and all those analytics that you would look at through a social media aspect, you really can only get the idea of its success through talking with the residents. So again, with the Salisbury 250 committee prioritizing that learning and sharing and bonding as a community, we needed to look past and look a little deeper into that success. So we go to the next slide. These were some of the quotes that I pulled from just Facebook. So this isn't even including anything that was said in person or anything that was said to family members or committee members off of social media. And again, I'm sure you're all aware how many comments that we can get on Facebook. So this is very much just a small snapshot, some of the ones that stood out the most to me. So a lot of them are expressing appreciation for the committee's efforts, not only for people who grew up in Salisbury, but also people who are outside of Salisbury, acknowledging that their ancestors, whether it be Salisbury residents or Acadian or Indigenous ancestors, they're also being honored through the work that the committee was doing. So in addition to the committee kind of being at the forefront, bringing all that in, these are also words of thanks for you folks around this table as well, through your support or your help, whether you volunteered, whether you sat on the committee, you all kind of helped to make this happen as well. So make sure that you take those words of thanks as well. So with that kind of wraps up my very brief presentation on Salisbury 250. Again, if you are interested and you haven't done so already, that report is yours to read. And I think some of the information is kind of fascinating to look at analytics and all that. So
Very good.
My only question is, what does she do for an encore?
Yeah, right?
Yeah,
Right?
holy mackerel.
Yeah,
Very much,
it's
Kate.
a pretty big year. Not sure we're going to top it, but we'll see.
That was great. You did an excellent job.
Thank you.
Thank you, Katie.
All right, with that, no pressure on the next presentation by Massimo on the overview of the financial assistance for recreation program in 2024. Sheila nervous. He's getting a drink before he starts.
Yeah.
It's dry.
Yeah, it is.
Before we begin, I just wanted to say thank you to those who volunteered at the Lantern Rock and at the Family Day events. From my perspective, I think they went pretty darn well, and it's testament to you and Marnie's work there this past couple of weeks. So thank you all for coming out and helping out. All right. So this is the wrap up. Basically, we're actually not right up on a year, but we've gone through 3 cycles of FAR, which is the full year. And this is my presentation on that wrap up, basically. So in 2024, our funding, we actually surpassed our goal of $20,000 thanks to businesses like Extreme and Guardian and Greenlight Design, obviously municipal funding as well. So that was our first accomplishment right off the bat. Within a month, I'd say, of getting the policy ratified, we actually already had all that money. So it's pretty great. And already this is pending, about $7,000 of that is pending, but this is our funding for 2025 already. Again, thanks to the Guardian, Extreme, but we have new funders as well, like the Lions Club and the Salisbury Fire Rescue. So I went in each cycle. So we have the registration assistance grant. This was the very first cycle. So all through May, it was our very first month of doing it. And you can kind of see where our money went. And you'll see the number one organization will be pretty consistent through the existence of FIRE thus far. And that's Amp It Up. We had 800 go to them. We had a couple other groups within Salisbury as well, like Eagles Soccer, the Salisbury Petitcodiac Flyers Baseball Association, Taekwondo, and Baptist Church for their camps. In total, we had just under $3,000 in May go out. And this is what September looked like. Again, Amp It Up. I think it was actually almost the exact same amount. A little bit less going out in total, but it was nice to see some hockey. Basketball was still there, and we also had Figure Skating Club, which is more of a consistent group as well. We knew that they were wanting some help, so we promoted at the rink right around this time, actually, September. So for September, we had just over $2,000 go out. And then the most recent cycle was in January. It was our biggest month to date, January 2025. We had a lot go to Amp It Up, as you see, over $1,000. A lot of other groups. We had some in Moncton, like the All-Star Cheerleading, Charlie Bourgeois Hockey School. That got quite a bit of funding as well, but for the most part, the rest was here in Salisbury. Just over $3,000 went out there. That's just for RAG. And speaking of our other programs, we have the Gas Equipment and Tournament Fund, which goes to things outside of registration, things like basketball shoes, whatever you might need for your sport or activity, as well as hotel, which you can see is quite popular. So I did go into Ward for the registration assistance grant, but I have it here lumped in with the GET Fund just to kind of make it more efficient. Condensed. So we had one individual, one family apply for the GET Fund in Ward 1, 2 in Ward 2, 2 in Ward 3, and 3 in Ward 4. 5 applications were for basketball. I think it was like 3 hotel, 2 equipment for that. Hockey, both were hotel receipts, and then dance was also a hotel receipt as well. And that's the total for 2024. And in 2025, we only got 1 application. It was from Ward 3. It was a hotel stay for cheerleading. So this is a registration assistance grant by Ward. In 2024, we had 5 applications in Ward 1, 9 applications in Ward 2, 10 in Ward 3, and 6 in Ward 4. There's the percentage breakdown. And in 2025 thus far, again, we only have done January. We had 5 in Wards 1, 2 in Ward 2, 3 in Ward 3, and 6 in Ward 4. So this is kind of the financial breakdown. As you can see, we have more money coming in than going out, which personally I didn't like to see, and there's reasons why, and I'm going to go into it in my next slide. Total remaining for 2024, we had just over 16,000, and in 2025, obviously, we just started. It is now at 24. This is more the next steps and probably some of the topic of discussion leading after this presentation that I would love to discuss with you folks. Primarily, I think the biggest thing is how we tackle the negative stigma associated with applying for FAR. I heard that from parents on my basketball team. I heard that from parents at the hockey rink. As much as people may want it and need it, they don't really want to apply because they think there's a stigma attached to applying for financial assistance, right? It's right in the name. However, I've told many people, even if it's just you want a pair of basketball shoes and you want to put that money to a vacation, that's something we'd be happy to help with, right? Like that's what I'm trying to promote. So there are some ideas I have for that. Primarily though, I'd love to promote in schools and have kids take that information to their parents. That might be the first step. Having the kid buy in and then the parents just being willing to do that, especially for school activities. I had no school applications. Despite how expensive sports are at school, basketball is pretty pricey, all these kind of things. Ski club, I would love to get more kids involved in that, and that's pretty pricey. So for school activities, I would love for the school to promote us a little bit more, but also for me to go into the schools and talk about it with them as well. So that's definitely something I'd love to do moving forward. And then also smaller organizations, music instructors. I know several local gyms and other smaller organizations. I would love to get that word out and meet with them. I know the Chiro Clinic. I've been trying to promote that to them because there's 16 to 18-year-olds that are going there that can apply for FAR, can save money on their gym membership. There's plenty of musical instructors out there that could definitely use some. They're the kids that they help teach the music to. They could definitely use some assistance as well. So it's not just meeting with these bigger organizations, these big associations, but meeting with the smaller organizations as well. Taekwondo definitely, for example, takes advantage of promoting us and having some kids apply. Again, utilizing anonymous testimonials. So as you saw, Katie had mentioned that in her presentation. That is something that I have not done and I'm planning on doing. I don't have a marketing brain, let's say, and then that's something I've definitely learned recently. So I think we can definitely use those testimonials moving forward. And this is the big part of the presentation, and obviously something that I would like to discuss with you folks. Having it available longer, especially the registration assistance grant, being available for longer, even just 5 months, I think would be better. It would give us more time to promote it, but also allow people to apply it because we haven't got a lot of applications outside of the months. I've been trying to tell people that I know hockey registration doesn't fall within the time that the RAG applications are open, but you can basically apply after and just request the funding after. So this would solve that issue, but I'm more talking just in general, letting people know that even if it's a month later or a month prior to the application being open, I still want people to apply for those registration assistance for the registration.
So many
Yeah.
questions about this.
Like,
Yeah.
so I know we talked about this before, like, this program just unfortunately didn't align with registration for sports at school for most of them. Like I'm doing volleyball right now, it's $300 to register for all those sports. It's just the timing was off, but it was on point for all the other associations, right?
Yeah.
So if we're gonna allow people to just do it, why would we put a restriction on?
Thank you,
Like,
yeah. Can we just leave it open the whole year?
Like
We
we can
can.
budget.
We can, and I'm working on with Marnie to get her more comfortable with the applications as well, because it is only me saying this. Marnie's starting to learn now more a little bit about it. I am not fearful of running out of money if that is the case. That is something we need to consider though, and having more money coming in if that's the case.
So we could just put a budget in, right? Like
Well,
for a
we
quarter
have-
or a month.
I mean,
Right?
you've only got the year's history, so
Yeah.
we'll learn over time and
Yeah.
maybe from our grant funders on what we're gonna need. We have a community that wants to help people out.
Yes.
Yeah, you just don't want to exhaust it before. the
Right.
regular
Yeah, you're right.
activity.
That's right, but I
And
mean,
gets-
if we just
gets
put
the
like a
budget in
target in
quarter,
place,
25% each
exactly,
quarter,
25%.
First
Yeah.
year, first year.
Yeah. That's
Plus, we have more history, but I think you have some good recommendations up there on where we can start to chunk away at it. And
Last
Were you
question.
done with your
Last
presentation?
question.
Because I have a lot of questions.
I got a couple more.
Okay.
This is technically the last page. I did briefly want to mention, in terms of municipal circles, it's gotten some traction. I've actually assisted a service commission and another municipality in developing their own. So in a sense, I think we're actually motivating other municipalities, which is something that's awesome for Salisbury. I'm actually going to be presenting this at the rec conference at the end of the, or not the end of the year, in May. So getting
fun.
traction, and other municipalities are obviously taking inspiration from it. So I just wanted to mention that as well. But yes, technically that is the proposed changes. But if you guys are thinking opening it year round, I definitely think the 25% allocated each quarter, I think that's a great idea. And it's a quick change to the policy because that's wording from the policy. So that's all that would need to change. But that's to answer your question. I would love for that to happen.
I think it just, there's so many things going on.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All year at the school,
Yeah.
especially Tammy, they do a great job. But it just, none of it fell within,
Within.
and that's okay. It just causes a lot of fundraising on the rest of the families right involved. The last thing I had was, would we ever be open to organizations submitting on behalf of somebody, right? Like
Probably not.
not an anonymous,
No.
like,
It would probably have to come from the parents. I do like that structure. It's similar to Jumpstart Kids Sport, and it seems to be the most efficient way. Get is a little different. That goes directly to the parent, which is the gas equipment in terms of fund that got to stop talking. acronyms, but so with the registration assistance grant, the parent must apply. The money then goes to the association organization, then it's refunded,
Yeah.
and or it just seems to be the most efficient way. And other municipalities, like when I'm communicating with them, they seem to say that that's probably the best way in terms of avoiding people taking advantage of it. And associations applying for someone, I don't necessarily think that that would be fair because you need to get your income statement to us. That's the biggest part, right, Austin?
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. That's what I was, because if ever the funding was exhausted, right now we're in a position where Massimo can sign off on basically the max amount eligible under the policy if they have that much, and expensive registration is more than that. Let's say that funding is exhausted for the quarter, then it goes based on that priority matrix, which starts with income.
Yeah.
So they would have to disclose that,
I was
which
just
is
thinking of trying to remove the stigma, because I know personally I get a lot of messages from parents that trust me as a team manager or program administrator, and they will not come.
The
I
income
was trying
statement
to
is
figure
a
out.
big part of it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want
That's fair.
the association
Yeah.
requesting that income statement then going to us.
So you make great headways in a year. I think we should celebrate successes and,
We're averaging $2,700 going out every single cycle. So
I was looking at some of the numbers. It's a good start. I think the more promotion that we do, I love the idea of some testimonials. Even if the testimonials are a little bit anonymous, we start to work with some of the organizations. I love to see music programs and other things up there for sure.
Mhm. That's a big one. There's a lot of dance, obviously. I was happy to see that up there. My goal was to see it equitable, I guess
Yeah.
is a good word to put it. Not just sports being funded, which was the entire goal with this. And that I was really happy to see that, especially Amp It Up. Maddie seems to be really pushing that and promoting that within her organization. So that's
Removing barriers for people to get their kids involved.
That's
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Multiple questions. Number one, is it too soon to think about maybe the name needs to change to remove the stigma? Do you
Because
think?
that's why I specifically said this wasn't a proposal by
Yeah.
any means. Financial assistance, which is the majority of the name,
Yeah.
is probably why there is a stigma, because people don't want to have, they don't want to help. They don't want to seem like they need help or want
Yeah.
help. It's a pride thing.
Have we chat GPT some options of like
Just slogans.
I would say
Yeah.
marketing wise, it's too early, but
Yeah.
you can take out financial assistance for recreation from the branding and just call it FAR. Nobody doesn't know what it stands for.
Yeah. I just think that like you're stopping them right off the gate. They
Yeah.
don't even read further down. They're just like, no. Also, I feel like you gotta get Tammy Constantine on your side here because, and I think specifically of like all the middle school went to Foley. And for some people, the day was expensive.
Yeah.
And it deterred a lot of like my kids' friends from going because the parent couldn't afford to send multiple children. So if when she's sending out those permission slips or whatever, like throw it at the bottom.
Yeah.
If you'd like some help, contact Massimo. It doesn't look like we're being bombarded currently with applications, but like I
No.
feel like that could be a nice
that's
option if you get her on board.
Each cycle that goes out, and I'm not a parent, so I don't receive the emails from the elementary school, middle school, and high school. Every time a cycle is about to go out, I do ask the principals to send that home in the email.
Yeah.
And they are aware of it. I think it's just not top of mind when
Right.
they are sending these ski club emails out. I would imagine there's a million other things
Yeah.
that are probably on their mind.
Most likely.
Stuff
But
that's
I mean, give her a cookie, maybe she'll do it.
Exactly.
Like,
I'm in her ear. with-
Cookies are always helpful.
Easy enough to add to.
A lot of the times,
Um,
something else where
yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So then last question. So there was 16,000 remaining from 2024. That just goes into a reserve fund. So we really have like 40 grand sitting there this year that we could be giving-
There is quite a bit of money pending for
Yeah.
2025. Like
Okay.
I did mention
Yeah,
those
yeah,
that we
yeah.
have. That's the people that agreed.
right.
Not even
But there's a
verbally.
potential to be 40-ish. So I think we just like budget per quarter,
Yeah.
divide it up and keep it open.
I would agree. Do I need to do anything on in the memo side of things?
No, it just gets ratified, and
Just get-
that's why we bring it to committee of the whole.
Exactly.
I would agree with that. And especially since Murray's you're going to become more of a larger part of it, it will kind of ease up the administrative workload, especially if we are going to be getting more, hopefully going to get more.
Yeah.
But I, as the person that will be that'll be seeing over this project, would be happy with that for sure. That's something I can sustain.
I just say, as it goes forward, keep an eye on how much time it's taking that way, because if you keep it in certain periods, then you limit how much work it's gonna be.
Yeah.
Right.
But if you open it up constantly, you never know, is it gonna be something there's another one, there's another one.
And maybe like if it's on a recurring basis, maybe there is specific times you need to go in. Maybe it's not the times that are there now. Like maybe it's
Right. You'll get history.
March and December, like as opposed to January and September, right?
Does
Like
that
that
have to
could
be
be.
in the policy, like, or can that just be a?
It should be because it's
Yeah.
we're assigning
Yeah, you're
resources to it, but the policy just gets modified to be year round, and then if anyone loves a good spreadsheet of numbers, it's Massimo, so he'll just track those and see what he'll just see what
My entire
what
presentation was Excel.
we'll just see what comes out of that, and then maybe we modify, maybe we don't.
The policy is also very friendly to me because it does allow me basically 2 to 3 weeks of reviewing applications. So
Yeah.
if I see a bunch coming in, I can just say, okay, Thursday I'm going to look at all of this.
Yeah.
So it's really even the month of, I'm able to do so many other things and still get to all of them within a week. So it's
That's awesome.
I doubt it's even going to be an issue.
Good start.
Yeah,
Not too many communities our size have made in Salisbury solution. I think we'd be very proud.
Yeah, I think it's
That's a good testament to our local businesses who are willing to help us with this.
I also think that they will continue to help if you are able to spend
Exactly.
27,000 a year. And you
Exactly.
can prove that to them, they'll step up even more.
Yeah.
And we'll step up even more.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I think
Already at 125.
There you go. Good job.
Yes.
Well, thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Need to read this?
No, because we'll just bring it to. Oh, yes, there is a recommendation for this one. Sorry,
But it's
So-
but just
going
wait.
to
Let
5
me.
months, but it would just be changed.
We can change the wording.
You don't even have to change the wording. That's a friendly. That's a
Just
friendly
as
amendment.
recommendations.
Yeah. So,
Right.
but we do need it moved if we can. Just formality.
I'll move the council approve the changes to the fire policy principle for ratification at the next meeting of council.
So moved by Deputy Mayor Blinas, seconded by Councillor Thorne. Questions to the motion, which we've already had a lot for the motion.
I think it's
Sorry.
it's wonderful. I send it
Uh,
to everybody that I know, and it's like,
Yeah.
I think it's smart. Yeah.
I think for many of us that are in the community for a long time with these initiatives, I think we've all seen the need and is very proud of this community. So with that, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded?
Aye.
Thank you, John.
Great job, you two.
Thank you.
All right. All right, now we're gonna move on to item number 4.5, crosswalk study report by our Public Works Department, I believe, or who's doing that?
I'm going to give a quick intro, and if there's questions, we can give you the responses. So, as council remember, in the fall or late summer, perhaps, we received a number of requests for a specific crosswalk location. Given the street in question in the majority of areas where we have crosswalks, given the fact that they're on provincial roads, we're required to get permission from DTI, which requires undertaking what we would call due diligence and would recommend doing regardless of essentially engaging a traffic engineer to ensure compliance with TAC guidelines. So we undertook that process last year and are just bringing it forward today. You'll see in the report, we're not going to run through in great detail in the 25 pages. In essence, we're looking for direction to implement the finding of the crosswalk report or crosswalk study. The premise of how we got here is they take traffic counts that were done as part of this project. They look at things like sight lines and those types of issues, anticipated development patterns, existing pedestrian or active transportation networks, and then make a determination on potential recommendations, which you see categorized in low, medium, or high priority. We do have an increase in the operating budget in this year in the transportation service area to implement on some of these, essentially as many as we can get done. There aren't any that are low or medium priority that are high priority or medium priority that are what we would call extensive infrastructure. So the gist of it is the flashing that you see basically at the corner or close to the corner of a road in Main Street. which means that we should be able to get make good progress on them this year, pending the approval from council. So that's the summary. And I will specifically add that the crosswalk that was kind of the catalyst for this will be the first one that we do. So that one will have a little bit more work because there's sidewalk modifications that need to be done. But other than that, it's pretty straightforward in terms of paint and signage, pending approval from council. And I guess I'll also add approval from DTI as well. We do have to send it to them as the formality requires. So with that, there is a motion to give us direction, and then we can answer any questions that council might have on the details of the report.
I'll move that Salisbury Town Council directs staff to implement the recommendations of the Salisbury Crosswalk prior.
Study.
You froze, but I think we get the wrong
moment to shine.
That's the right word.
That sounds about right.
Thanks for a second. By Councilor Glant. Questions?
Just looking at the priority study. When you look at the suggestions of where they are going to put them, one of the ones they talk about is the one closest to the grocery store today. And they said they don't recommend a new one for the new trail connection. But the trail connection they're considering, I don't think is the same spot that we're still planning on putting it.
That has changed since.
Yeah.
So,
And ideally, we'll revert back. Like, this is the ideal trail connection.
On the east side of the
Yes.
grocery store.
Yeah. And the challenge, not the challenge, but the reason that it's changed is the west side, the west connection, was not, we still want it to go there, but we're not moving forward there right now because of conversations with landowners. So in a perfect world, the trail network will look like this. And if not, then we would have them revise it and it could potentially be at that same location.
So I thought we had changed it. It has changed back to the original one.
No, but it may, but
We're still being looked at.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
The first one is on the board of Girl Scouts.
That's the one that I mentioned. Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be that requires a sidewalk modification that we would do first.
And if we can afford it, go as far as we can afford it, but even the one on Main Street and Glendale, Gordon Street shouldn't be a very expensive one. It's just a painted crossing area.
Yes.
Mhm.
and signage.
And signage, yeah, without flashing signage.
That's one that you can use to help promote the library too, because it's close to the library.
True. Yeah, true. Yeah, in a perfect world, pending the sidewalk modifications, we should get a pretty good chunk of this done this year based on the budget that we have.
If it's
Of those ones, there's some of the non-expansive infrastructure ones. Yeah.
Well, I think this is great.
I do too. All right, so any additional questions? No additional questions, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I know you are. I hate to say that, but I know this is something you're passionate about, so. Thumbs up. All right. Contrary minded. All right, you have your direction. That's great. So we'll now move on to item number 4.6, Government of New Brunswick 2025-2026 budget submission.
So 'tis the season for the other levels of government to prepare their budgets for the upcoming 2025 and 2026 fiscal year. As part of that, it's essentially standard practice that they issue budget consultation requests or a discussion paper for different organizations and groups, including municipalities, but also whether it's not-for-profits or different community groups or residents in general to submit priorities for those budgets. This would be our third submissions. The last 2 years, excluding this year, we've prepared a submission to the province based on their discussion paper, and that is what is drafted in the package this evening. I will note that in the package as well, we included UMMB's submission that I don't know if it has been submitted to the province, but will be by tomorrow's deadline or the day after. That was circulated to members last week. They were kind enough to provide us with the draft of their section, in particular with fiscal reform, that we were able to use as part of our submission, just to make sure we were beating the same drum. So thank you to UMMB for that. But it is now public and will soon be, if not already, submitted to the province. The essence of our submission beyond that fiscal reform priority with in tandem with UMB is essentially there's three others. So the first one is that the province continue to look at infrastructure investments. We've called out specific ones within the town, being the WM32 culvert, P380 bridge, the Salisbury Elementary School, and then gone into, I would say, scratching the surface of the use of the special provincial levy in former LSDs. The third is to increase funding to municipalities for housing or for projects that will spur housing. And then the fourth is for cellular reception and internet connectivity, given this has been a concept or item of conversation at council, and the province is allegedly looking at potential investments in that sector. So that's the gist of it. The piece that I will mention that had us a little bit on a bit of a fact-finding mission as it relates to fiscal reform is that we did learn something else with property assessments through the process, or property tax bills, which I would say we were a bit surprised to learn, or I would say surprised that we weren't aware of. And it was reassuring that UMB confirmed they were also did not understand that this is how this charge is made. But essentially, if I'm to summarize it, there is the local government rate, which council set. There's the non-residential rate, which the ratio is set by local governments. And there's also provincial rate. So that includes the special provincial levy, which we've talked about in great length a number of times, which is DTI services. There's the non-residential rate that's charged by the province. So if you're a commercial business, you get the municipal tax, but you also get the provincial one. But there's also another one that we've had questions on before that we assumed was related to owner or non-owner occupied. That's called residential other. That is actually a provincial fee that is charged on properties that exceed 0.5 hectares in size, which is about 1.2 acres. It's a little bit over, but say 1.2. And knowing that given the lot sizes and a number of areas in our boundary, that the number could not necessarily be very low. And sure enough, it's over properties within the town. Yeah. And so essentially anything, if you have a property that's, just for the sake of easy numbers, 2 hectares in size, you will pay this residential other fee, they call it, on that 0.5 extra beyond that 1.5 hectares that goes to the province. So the numbers weren't all there, just as we were confirming that was in fact the case. Service New Brunswick gave us that 67 million number. We weren't sure if that was the assessment beyond the that hectare amount, or if that was the total assessment of all of the properties. And sure enough, that's just the assessment hectares, which is it's over 700 of the province from the town, in addition to the non-residential amounts and the special provincial levy. So a number to keep in our back pockets. And UMB, we've been going back and forth just as we were confirming that this was accurate, and if Service New Brunswick was giving us the number. So we've given them our context and our submissions so they can use that when others are trying to run their numbers. But I would say, I guess, all this to say, if anything else, we've learned something to keep again in our back pocket as we go through some of the conversations at the provincial level for fiscal reform.
And as well, educating our government and our MLAs on the assessment process and what residents are paying.
Mm-hmm.
Because we have MLAs that are not giving factual information to our residents, that we're, again, trying to educate them. I do think it's been a good, from that, we've been digging.
Maybe they should all be on.
As we're learning more information, I think we'll become better armed. Yeah. So I want to thank for the hard work from your office on that.
No, I think it's
okay. So
it should be ours.
So there are recommendations, or sorry, the recommended letter, but that is a piece that we can use as part of our argument going through fiscal reform. But if there are other priorities that council would like us to highlight, or any changes that they would like to have made to the letter, then now is the time. I think the deadline, if it's not tomorrow, it's the next day.
So there's obviously the standards that we've always talked about. Roads, culverts, bridges, those type of scenarios. The P380 bridges on the government's plans, but if there's anything additional, then now's the time to bring it forward.
I'll move that council approve the draft letter to the government of New Brunswick for the 2025-2026 budget priorities and direct administration to send the submission to the province.
Seconded.
Moved by Councillor Colwell, seconded by Councillor Thorne. Questions?
I do have a comment. I believe when reading through the letter, page 6 on the bottom line where it talks about the replacement of Salisbury Elementary School,
Mhm.
it says the town has committed to having land acquired
The
prior
province.
to.
Present, yeah.
Just catch.
Fix that thing.
Good job.
There you go. That's why he's the deputy.
Good catch.
Love it, love it.
The school would have been built by now if we were responsible for the land.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I think. But yes, good catch.
Go through this fiscal year.
Mm.
Change that. Seems like
I think we're all very excited.
Yeah, yeah. We did get on that note. We have a meeting confirmed with
Yeah,
the minister
saw
over
that.
in Fredericton next month. So
It'd be fun. Okay, additional questions? Not seeing any. All in favor? Aye. John,
Aye.
contrary minded? Motion, or it's not motion, but basically recommendations are given your way. So with that, we have nothing for close this evening. Moving on to mayor and councillor statements. I'll be very brief and quick, but Massimo mentioned thank you to obviously the staff and council for all the hard work during Swedish Lantern Trail Walk and the family days. I'd like to also extend that through to Public Works, who's in the room as well. The park, we couldn't have been in the park doing anything if you guys hadn't get that all cleared out. Amazing job. And the trail, for anybody on our council that's watched the sidewalk plows go through with that massive amount of ice storm that we had on top of the slow slogging to get that stuff cleaned up. I know it took a lot of tremendous effort, but I thank you very much for all that you do. And then on top of that, just our condolences again to the Ailes family on loss of our councillor, Ali Ailes. It's a true testament to the public service that he did over, his lifetime. That we lost a great one. So with that, any additional comments from council?
I do. I had a library board meeting this past week. And I thought something exciting that came out of that is that the library is celebrating their 45th anniversary this year in November. So the board will be considering some ways to celebrate this. I've made some suggestions and thought maybe Austin might like to help with some of them. So now that it's on the record, we'll discuss that later.
After you get back
from vacation.
We'll put that on the regular. If everybody let the wag, we deferred some things so that we can prioritize.
Anyway, so I thought that was something that we should keep in mind. So they'll be celebrating that sometime in the fall.
Okay, that's great. I did not just put it here. That's a great one. Anything additional? With that, thank you very much. Oh,
No, it's
Oh.
motion to adjourn. I jumped the gun.
okay. So with that, a motion to adjourn
Oh.
and seconded by Deputy Mayor Valinas. All in favor?
Aye.
Reminded, motion carried.